Hello everyone, you're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. It's Thursday, June the 15th. I'm Batsir Namshar. Our top stories for News Mongolia. Ulaanbaatar dialogue on Northeast Asian security starts. Over 70 employees join Strategic Command Headquarters training for earthquake response in Tuk Province. Registration of documents for goods that enter through the Zamiin-Uud Customs Borders Post is slow. For the news, stay tuned. The Ulaanbaatar dialogue on Northeast Asian security starts on Thursday. Mongolia has pursued creating a security dialogue mechanism in Northeast Asia since the 1980s. These efforts resulted in the Ulaanbaatar dialogue on Northeast Asian security initiative in 2013.
The Ulaanbaatar Dialogue on Northeast Asian Security has been held annually since 2014. The international conference has evolved into an open and inclusive mechanism bringing together representatives from all countries in the sub-region. Discussion topics cover a broad range of issues including security, energy, infrastructure, green development, and opportunities for humanitarian cooperation.
This is the 8th edition of the Ulaanbaatar Dialogue on Northeast Asian Security. Today, the meeting is attended by representatives from 30 countries, 10 international NGOs, around 60 international scholars, in total by around 200 participants. The dialogue attracts a wide range of participants as it's being held in person after COVID-19 pandemic. The dialogue will include 5 main panel discussions on security, risk and perspectives in Northeast Asia, on multilateral cooperation in the region, future peace prospects discussion, post-COVID pandemic economic recovery and energy sector integration. This is the 8th edition of the Ulaanbaatar Dialogue on Northeast Asian Security. Today, the meeting is attended by representatives from 30 countries, 10 international NGOs, around 60 international scholars, in total by around 200 participants. The dialogue attracts a wide range of participants as it's being held in person after COVID-19 pandemic. The dialogue will include 5 main panel discussions on security, risk and perspectives in Northeast Asia, on multilateral cooperation in the region, future peace prospects discussion, post-COVID pandemic economic recovery and energy sector integration. Zamiin Province in Mongolia recently conducted disaster prevention exercises across all of its homes and villages, involving the participation of over 600 government officials and citizens. The exercises focused on earthquake prevention and response, aimed to assess participants' readiness and raise their awareness. This time in Tuk Province, Strategic Command Headquarters training for earthquake response was conducted with over 70 employees undergoing intensive training. The training program consists of tasks for 72 hours of operative or tactical operations, 468 hours of astronomical or natural time, conducted over a span of 3 days. Research suggests that the likelihood of earthquake risks increases when individuals remain in one location. Currently, we are focusing on the situation at the 3rd hour mark. During this stage, we have developed scenarios that pose both aggravating and mitigating factors and are actively addressing them. For example, in a previous earthquake, 60 private buildings collapsed, and there is a concern that some of the remaining structures affected by tremors could also suffer the same fate. Consequently, we are diligently working on formulating effective responses to such scenarios of earthquake frequency.
The disaster prevention exercises were held simultaneously in all 17 homes and 6 villages of Zamiin Province. The training exercise held in Ulaanbaatar saw active participation of more than 600 government officials and citizens who dedicated 3 days to assess their preparedness and readiness levels. The primary objective of these exercises was to strengthen disaster response capabilities and reinforce the province's safety and resilience in the event of a potential emergency.
In Ulaanbaatar, A survey was conducted among citizens, workers and government employees at the Orkhon 6th PAG, focusing on 16 key points related to earthquake disaster signals. The survey aimed to assess participants' understanding and awareness of earthquake prevention and response. Furthermore, training and informational sessions were held to educate participants on how to prevent and respond to earthquake disasters, as well as how citizens can protect themselves and others from the hazards associated with earthquakes. In Eurosum, the governor of the province recently issued 2 orders pertaining to disaster prevention training. The commission members, comprising 100% participation, are actively engaged in all aspects of disaster prevention and response. At the provincial level, we maintain online connectivity to ensure seamless information exchange and participate in relevant training programs. With thorough preparation and dedication, we are fully equipped to fulfill our responsibilities and handle any task that may arise. Registration of documents for goods that enter through the Zamiin-Uud border crossing port's custom is taking too much time, causing the goods to remain stuck at the customs. It's related to the customs declaration that used to be filled at the Zamiin-Uud border port, but are now filled in at the customs agency of Ulaanbaatar city.
Even though there is less human interaction and it is submitted online, citizens complain that it takes too much time and causes delays. Before, the clearance of documents used to be completed within 30 minutes to 3 hours, but now the citizens have to wait for a few days to get their clearance. The assessment documents are sent to Ulaanbaatar, but we don't know when it will be processed. There are many problems. Because of this, the price of goods is increasing, and there is a lot of bureaucracy. It is related to the operation of customs at the border.
There is a queue. Until the assessment is completed, we are waiting for 1 hour and 30 minutes. After that, they take the probe. For example, the lorry that crossed the border at 3 o'clock is checked at 4:30 a.m. This process continues for 40 to 50 minutes and is now already 5 a.m. So we don't manage to go out during the day.
New practices have caused some challenges, but the complication and delays should not be increased. The citizens are stressed that the service that was processed within 2 to 3 hours now can take as much as 3 days.
Registration of the documents is conducted at the Integrated Processing Center of Ulaanbaatar from the 1st of June. The process is being conducted on a test basis in June. There is nothing difficult to understand.
Because of digital registration of the customs documents, the hotels of Zamiin-Uud as well as the quick service points are crowded. As long as the goods are stuck at customs, consequently the cost of goods would increase.
You're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. Some 110 million people around the world have had to flee their homes because of conflict, persecution or human rights violations, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees says.
The war in Sudan, which has displaced nearly 2 million people since April, is but the latest in a long list of crises that has led to the record-breaking figure.
This is where we stand today. We have 110 million people that have fled because of conflict, persecution, discrimination, violence, often mixed with other motives, in particular the impact of climate change. So you have quite a package, the usual, I would say, package of causes that have caused a further increase. You may recall just a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, when we announced that for the first time we had gone over 100 million displaced people. Well, already 10% more have been added to this figure. It's quite an indictment on the state of our world, if I may say, to have to report that.
Last year alone, an additional 19 million people were forcibly displaced, including more than 11 million who fled Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in what became the fastest and largest displacement of people since World War II. Last year, the agency recorded 35 emergencies, 3 to 4 times more than in previous years. Conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, and Myanmar were also responsible for displacing more than 1 million people within each country in 2022. The majority of the displaced globally have sought refuge within their nation's borders. One-third of them, 35 million, have fled to other countries, making them refugees, according to UNHCR report. Most refugees are hosted by low to middle-income countries in Asia and Africa, not rich countries in Europe or North America, Grandi said. Turkey currently hosts the most refugees with 3.8 million people, mostly Syrians who fled the civil war, followed by Iran with 3.4 million refugees, mostly Afghans.
The majority of the people that flee not to rich countries, but to countries that are either poor or middle-income countries, low or middle-income countries, about 76%.
But there are also 5.7 million Ukrainian refugees scattered across countries in Europe and beyond. The number of stateless people has also risen in 2022 to 4.4 million, according to UNHCR data. But this is believed to be an underestimate. Regarding asylum claims, the US was the country to receive the most new applications in 2022 with 738,000 claims. It's also the nation with the largest backlog in its asylum system, Grandi said. The United States, Spain, and Canada recently announced plans to create asylum processing centers in Latin America, with the goal of reducing the number of people who trek their way north to the Mexico-US border. Last week, European leaders renewed financial promises to North African nations in the hopes of stemming migration across the Mediterranean, while the British government insists on so far failed plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, something the UNHCR is opposed to. But there were also some wins, Grandi said, pointing to what he described as a positive sign in the European Union's negotiations for a new migration and asylum pact, despite criticism from human rights groups.
If you look at the trend...
One day after the killing of more than 45 people, including 23 children, in a displaced camp in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, an envoy for the Vatican called on authorities and the international community to build peace in the country, suffering decades of violence.
The M23 rebel group rose to prominence 10 years ago when its fighters seized Goma, eastern Congo's largest city on the border with Rwanda.
In the name of the millions of migrants forced and refugees that move in various parts of the world, we appeal to the goodwill of people and especially to those who have a position of authority in the country and in the international world to build peace.
La pace.
Cardinal Luis Antonio Tale, envoy of the Pope to Democratic Republic of Congo and pro-prefect for the section of evangelization of Dicastery for Evangelization, told a crowd of displaced who had gathered at Bushagara camp to listen his message. Congo has long accused Rwanda of supporting the M23 group, and powerful voices in the West back that assertion, which Rwanda strongly denies. Tale said not just the Pope, but the Universal Church is looking for a way to promote justice, truth, love, and peace, and added that bishops of DRC, of Rwanda, and Burundi want to work together for the peace in the region. In the last episode of violence this week, more than 45 people, 23 of them children, were killed, and a dozen wounded by a militia group in Ituri province, said UNICEF and MONUSCO. the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Congo. The attack, which occurred Sunday evening into Monday morning, is believed to have been perpetrated by the Codeco militia group, which massacred vulnerable displaced people at the Lala displacement site in Jugu territory, said the United Nations. Violence has increased across eastern Congo in the last years, where conflict has been simmering for decades. More than 120 armed groups, including the M23 and Codeco, are fighting in the region, most of them for land and control of mines with valuable minerals, while some groups are trying to protect their communities. According to the United Nations, the violence in the country has displaced 6.2 million people. More than 560,000 live in Goma and the territories around the city. Tarla gave early in a mass in Goma, attended by local authorities and hundreds of residents.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you on Friday with more news and updates. Goodbye.